alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Dear Madam Juera and all the students, first of all, once again, I would like to welcome again to this class, and thank you very much for some email to me that question about some of the lectures, the notes that I give to you. Just want to say, I think you have to wait until I finish the class, because some of the question I'll be answer later, right? But just a point for our sister from Bangladesh, I think. The reason that I don't mention about sign yet at this moment, because I just want to tell you or to share with you that sign is not belong to the Western scholars alone, because before the Western civilization, we have the Islamic civilization. They call it the Golden Ages. And then before that, we have the Byzantium civilization. And then we have the, what we call it, Greek civilization. In the East, we have a Chinese civilization, of Indian civilization, and also Persian civilization. So we have a lot of civilization. And one of the indicators of this civilization is the activities of science and technology. One of the indicators, other than the having a good management and whatever, the ethic, proper ethic, and so on. And at the same time, we have advance in science and technology. They cannot establish their civilization without science and technology. That's why I discussed to you for the last two lectures about the who is this man actually who are entrusted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a vicegerent of God, as Khalifatullah fil ard. Because we have the potential, we have the ability. Allah give us the ability in order to manage this world. That one of the ability is science and technology, the ability to develop science and technology. In other words, the ability to understand the nature and to take the benefit of this nature for our usefulness, either in the agriculture sector, either in the building sectors, either in whatever sectors that we need science and technology. And the second lecture, which is last 2 weeks, I took some photo on the past civilization. And today I will discuss to you about a little bit about the history of science and technology itself. So I will begin this lecture. We have only 45 minutes, but inshallah, next week I will start talking to you what is science until we finish our lecture. We have another 3 lectures, altogether 6 lectures. So human are special creatures. That this is we have to understand, and Allah acknowledged this. Laqad karamna bani Adam. I mentioned to you several times, and a lot of ayah in Al-Qur'an mentioning that we are special creatures. We are not the animal. At the same time, we are not like angels or like Iblis, whatever it is. They can also, but we are better than them. That's why Shaitan, this devil, always mention Ana khayra minhu to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm better than him. Khalaqtani min nar wa khalaqtahu min tin. I was created from nar, from fire, and he was created from soil. So something like that. But Allah said we are the best. That's why Allah entrusts us with the task of Khalifatullah fil ard, to manage and also to administer and also to look after all this this worldly time. So this we have to acknowledge. Otherwise, we don't talk about science and technology, because other creatures, you look animal, you look ape, whatever it is, they cannot. So therefore, if you look at this indicator of today, international indicator, one of the KPI, key performance index, or one of the things that people look at it is the S&T activities. So before giant company would like to invest in your company, in your country, in Malaysia, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, or in whatever it is, first they are looking how many scientists do you have and what type of research that you have. Can they bring their company, and then the local people, you know, can we use the local people in order to develop the industry and so on. So that's why this is one of the KPIs. So that country have to invest in science and technology. We have a lot of resources, including human being. And we already, you know, in history, we already established our own civilization because we have the talent, because we have the people. So, and then I just want to comment you, throughout the history, science and technology knowledge has been transferred from one civilization to next civilization. So science and technology, that means Muslims never claim that they are the pioneer of certain thing. But certain things they are pioneering it, like light, theory of light, for instance, algebra, for instance, even algebra. The sign of numbers was created by Hindus because they want to count how many gods do they have. So, but we inherit from them. So when Allah said in Al-Qur'an, "Fas'alu ahla dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun," please ask those who know if you do not know. You know, please ask the expert. Fas'alu ahla dhikri. Please ask the expert. So if you do know certain thing about medicals, about IT, about whatever it is, you have to ask you have to find the expert on that. This is embedded in Al-Qur'an. So Muslim, they are encouraged, even though the source of knowledge is not from Muslim, from who they are, because they are also human beings like us. But the difference between them and us, that we accept God is our creator. They don't accept it, but they are also human beings. We don't know. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next month, maybe next year, maybe after they're doing their research in the nature, Allah give them guidance and they become a good Muslim later on. A lot of scientists, I know about this, like people mention about these the latest one about in embryology. So he can explain very well how this from one cells and then the process of mitosis and so on, and then become baby and become like mentioned in the Quran. Okay, well, next one, we also, before we talking about Islamic civilization in the 6th century, they already have this I mentioned to you just now. This a lot of civilization before us. And Greek and Byzantine civilization were dominated by religious and political elite group. But for them, for this civilization, the country, the nation, was dominated by religious and political elite group, not by the scientists. That's why when you ask so many questions, like what happened to Socrates, and then they put him in trial, and then finally they put in death, because he asked a lot of questions about God, and finally he said in his conclusion, because to him, in order to know certain thing, you must be able to put forward a lot of questions. Similarly, as a scientist, why when I release this pen it fall down? Why sharp knives can cut? Why fire can burn, and so on and so on? But it's okay, because that one is concerning nature. But the moment he asks about what is happiness, who gave you the bounty of whatever it is, with the pleasure in life, and finally, who is this God? So when Socrates asked a lot of questions, so his conclusion is that God does not exist. God only exists in your mind. You are the one who determined God. He mentioned to his people. So finally, he was put in trial, and they killed him in 399 before century. So at the age of 71 years old, and it also happened to Galileo Galilei. When his debate with Pope, what's his name? Pop the eights something. Then finally, because they cannot answer his question, and then finally they put in as a house arrest. So finally, what happened is that the scientists during their era said, no, we are not against religion. We also religious people. We went to church, we went to temple, and whatever it is. We believe in God, but we just want to know who is this God that we consider as our God. So he was put in trial. Okay, that doesn't happen in Islam. And then in Islam, all useful knowledge is important and must be sought. You must seek the knowledge, even though knowledge is categorized as Fardhu Ain and Fardhu Kifayah, whatever it is. Fardhu Ain means that every one of us must study it in order to become a good Muslim. We have to pray, we have to perform our wudu, if we have to fast in Ramadan, we have to go for Hajj, and then all these things is considered Fardhu Ain. And then is another type of knowledge is Fardhu Kifayah, which is not a must for everyone, but who has the ability, they have to move forward and they have to acquire that knowledge. Otherwise, you cannot build your nation. Even I cannot buy my shirt if nobody try to make this. We cannot even have a good Zoom technology as we have this lecture right now if nobody dedicated themselves in order to obtain this knowledge. So in Islam, actually both knowledge are important, and we learn from each other. We learn from each other, and we share the knowledge together. But Fardhu Ain is you have to maintain because it doesn't change. But Fardhu Kifayah keep on changing all the time, like science and technology keep on changing. So that's why we say that science is not absolute, because the knowledge is changing from one generation to another generation. For example, if I cut this pen to small pieces, if I cut this, finally the smallest that you cannot cut is called atom by John Dalton. But later on, when J.J. Thomson did some studies, he found out atom is not the smallest particle. We have electron, we have neutron, we have positron, and so on. So there are other smallest particle than atom. And then Rutherford did some experiment, and he found out that there's a charged particle, and so on and so on. And finally, until today, we found out the electron is not a particle, but it's a wave. So we can make use of this wave. That's why we can have this communication by having handphone. We can talk to everybody without any cable, because we know around us we have a electromagnetic wave, and if we understand the character of electromagnetic wave, we can utilize it. That is science. That is physics. But Fardhu Ain is important because we have to know our God, we have to be good to our neighbor, we have to be good to our children, and so on. But science is another knowledge that also important. So we must acquire it. Otherwise, if you don't acquire the knowledge and other people have that knowledge, they will come to your country and they will make use of your country. Like some of our country, we have oil, we have mineral, but they come and finally they got a lot of things. I mean, a lot of bounty from God, from our earth, from our country. So that's why we have to improve our knowledge in science and technology. We also must emphasize that learning science and technology is part of activity in order to develop this Islamic civilization. Okay, this is, I just want to share to you, this is very latest maps from Google, just the place where the civilization was established. Around this Black Sea, you can see about Bulgaria, Greece here, this is the old Greek civilization, Ankara, Byzantium, and also this area, around this area. So this is very old civilization. Later on, Islam came from here. Rasulullah SAW was born in Mecca around here. and then Islam developed, and finally all this area become dominated by Muslim, and they come together with us and study science and technology and develop this. Okay, we go further, and then the first city ever known by people, but for the historian, is Al-Reha. I mentioned to you last week, I think, last 2 weeks. This was established in 9600 before century by Canaan. The Canaan people, they are descendant from Nuh alayhi salam. One of his son established these tribes. So, but we don't know much about the technology before that. We know about Nuh alayhi salam, who built the ark. You need science and technology in order to build that ark. We know about Idris alayhi salam. He was very clever, and especially in steel making, and so on. But not much writing that we can read from these people, and only except this Canaan. And then apparently, as until was developed to strengthen the administrative system and power of the emperor. Now, in the beginning, they need science in order to fulfill their needs. I mean, for food, for clothes, for shelter, and so on. And finally, when people, the elite people in political elite, I mean, they develop science and technology for the purpose to conquer other countries. Egyptian civilization developed much more before that, around this area. After this area, about that time, and peak during Tutankhamun, and some mention this is the time during Moses alayhi salam. And then they also built pyramids, spring, irrigation system, agriculture, and securities, meaning that they already have the knowledge of science and technology. Without science and technology, how come they build pyramid? How come they build spring? How come they irrigation and so on? So they already have developed. I mean, if you watch TV, National Geographic and whatever it is, you can find out a lot of things that they already have, meaning that they already advanced in science and technology. But not much known about science and technology activities in other areas, and also in that place. We only know Paro, we only know Haman and Karun, and so on. But who's the real scientist doing all the science activities? We don't know, because there was no written evidence and whatever it is. In their grave, they mention about the king. In their grave, they mention about the political elite, not about the scientists. So if we study, this is considered as the father, the people who start science and technology activities. I mentioned here, including the date. Aristotle never met Socrates. You know about this because Aristotle was born in 384, and Socrates was killed in 399, and he was born in 470, meaning his age about 71 years old. And then Socrates is considered by Western philosophers as the father of Western philosophers, and he was born in Athens, Greece, and is considered as enigmatic figure. Enigmatic figure is because he never writes, he never write any book, any papers, but he put forward a lot of questions, as I mentioned to you. So during his time, people just memorized. And you remember during Rasulullah SAW, Prophet, in the earliest stage of Rasulullah in Mecca, they remember. Not many people can read. In the book that I read, only few people like Sayyidina Omar, they can read. Only 17 who can read during Rasulullah. Of course, in this area, people don't write and whatever it is, because there is no material for writing. So, but their memory is very good. They can memorize. So, his student, if you can read from him, Plato being Socrates, the student of Plato, he liked to follow Socrates and inherit some of the question put forward by Socrates. So this is the beginning of science and technology. And according to Western people, according to my reading, so his student, particularly Aristotle and Plato, because the name of Plato and Aristotle actually, without Muslim scholars, without people like Ibn Sina, people like Al-Farabi, maybe Al-Ghazali, people will never know who is this Aristotle. They call it Aflatun. But because of the Muslim scholar, when they inherit some knowledge, they will say this knowledge come from somebody. So finally, when they write, they put in their writing that Aristotle said this and Plato said this. According to Plato and Socrates mentioned to them something like that. So finally, their name is put on record by Muslim scholars. So they put in their what they call it the dialogue of Socrates, according to this Plato, and to find the truth in various style and method of rational questioning. This is how this method used by Socrates. But in 399, I mentioned to you, he was accused of disrespecting and playing with sacred object, divine object, meaning that the children, the youngsters like to meet Aristotle, Socrates, and ask a lot of questions with him. But the elders, the political figures and the dignitaries, they don't like. So finally, they accuse him as Socrates tried to brainwashing the mind of teenagers, and finally he was tried and put in. He was sentenced to death while in prison. Of course, some people tried to help him, but he said, "No, I'm ready for my principle." Okay, and then we go. So in the writing of Plato, there are a lot of questions put forward by him. So this I keep on the same one. From there come the concept of Socrates Mythology. So if you study about the how Socrates tried to find the truth, according to one of reported in the National Geographic, because I subscribe this National Geographic, and one of the volume mentioned about the story of Socrates, and they said that in order to find the truth, he has to put so many questions, and this question until today, the method of questioning is used in our court, in our justice system, be it east or west. So they will put public prosecutor and defense counsel, and the public prosecutor will question the accused so that the truth will prevail. And then the defense counsel will also put a question so that to make the judge will doubt whatever question by the other lawyer. So this is what happening. So by asking all these questions, finally they said that the truth will prevail. So this is what they call it Socrates method. So during that time, there is no university, there is no school, whatever it is. But Plato, during his time, he established what they call it academy. So according to Western scholars, the academy was the first ever established institution to develop this, to enhance the academy. But unfortunately, they have to close this academy due to war and whatever, in 13th centuries. In the 3rd centuries. So this is 3rd century, last only about 500 years. So they have to close it. And then I put forward because time is give me. I have another 5 minutes. So this I think you can read the science technology activities and about 6 centuries, because you know Rasulullah SAW was born in 571, and after that the Islamic civilization. So between Byzantium and Greek civilization, there is common factor, because both religious scholars, they are again to mix religions and S&T activities. So they are the same. So that's why they share the same one. But when Islam came, which we are going to discuss later, maybe another 2 lectures, you can see that we never separate religions with science. And religion become the motivator, the driving factors behind the activities of scientists. Because religion asks us to seek knowledge, because religion asks us to make this world much more better and better and better. So we develop science and technology in order to live in a better condition. So we build library, we build a university, and I will discuss to you later, because of the teaching of Islam. But in the Byzantium and also in the Greek civilization, they don't mix. So they will say that I'm religious people, but when I'm doing some activities, or I'm doing activities in science and technology, I have to put religions aside, because the religions and science you cannot mix. This according to them. So there are numbers of Jews and Christians involved that in the church and whatever it is, but they have to follow the directive from church, synagogue, and whatever it is. So in Byzantium, so saying that scientific activities did not develop is not true. They developed, but as long as the activities is not contradict with the activity of science and activity of religion, is okay. But if it's contradict, they got problem, how to solve that problem. So because of that, they have to put aside the issue of religion. So I put a lot of this. I intend to finish this. I have another 2 minutes. So you can see that some of the Christian, they don't like that. But only small people who live in, they call it Nestorian Christian, Nestorian Christian, who live in Jerusalem at the time, they don't separate. But finally, there was, army from Greeks and also from Alexandria in Egypt. They come and they conquer Jerusalem, and then they throw these people away. So these people, this Nestorian Christian, they went to Persian, where some Persian they allow science and technology activities in their belief. So according to this leaflet, the piece of history, old history, saying that the father of Salman Al-Farisi, he is from Persian, was a scientist, medical doctor. So he heard about Rasulullah SAW in Mecca, but he didn't join Rasulullah SAW in Mecca, but he joined Rasulullah in Medina. When there is a war, I think strange war, and Rasulullah asked Salman Al-Farisi how we are going to face this war, So Salman Al-Farisi give his idea about making trench. So according to that writing, that is the way how scientists thinking. So the way that Salman Al-Farisi give advice, showing to us that he was a scientist. So that means, according to that, his father was a medical doctor, also practicing medical doctor, and they live in area where in Persian, in Iran right now, where the activity of science and technology was flourished at that time. other place not. So meaning that Rasulullah SAW accept the idea when help ask the people who knows about this thing, about science, technology of war, the science of war, and so on. So I give you some note here. This is the case. I mentioned about there Salman Al-Farsi, Jundis Shafur. The place in Iran in Persian is Jundis Shafur. In the city where Salman Al-Farsi was born, his father was a medical doctor. Greek and scientific were later redeveloped by the Syrian Arab in the era of Byzantine civilization. In this, then coming the era of Islam. I think I have to stop that because time is not permitted. It's not with me. So, Madam Juara, maybe I can stop that and we continue next week.
Yeah, Prof. Sure.
Yeah, but
we open for Q&A.
Maybe we don't have time. Another lecturer is waiting for his turn, right?
Yeah, we.
Inshallah.
10 minutes, Prof.
Oh, okay.
10 minutes, yes.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes, so we can open for Q&A, one or two question maybe.
Okay, inshallah.
Okay, any one of you want to question? You can raise your hand, or you can write in the chat box that we have open for you. Or you can direct open mic. Okay. There's a question in the chat box now, Prof.
Yeah, no.
From Nuruddin.
It tend to be theoretical or practical. No, both theoretical and practical. Surely they establish a lot of things. You can see with your own eyes. They establish the pyramid. They establish the agricultural system, irrigation, and whatever it is. So real practical. It's not just theoretical.
From Abdullah.
Yeah. Just now is from Nuruddin.
Yeah, Brother Abdullah, you can open your mic. Brother Abdullah. Here is the hand, but don't open mic.
Accidentally.
Okay.
Okay, inshallah, I will give this note to you and also to Prof. Jamal.
Yeah, all the notes that Prof have given, we already upload to the what they call the link, so you can access during the link if you want. But okay, another host. What they said. Okay, Brother Abdullah, I already allow you. You can open your mic. Yeah. Again. Brother Abdullah, you can open your mic.
Maybe the link is not good.
Okay. Another question from Nuruddin.
Yeah. Is the concept of tribunal? I do not know about this, but according to my reading, it said that perhaps the Salman Al-Farsi was a scientist, because the way that he responded to Rasulullah when Rasul asked him how to face this very long war in the war of Khandaq. So he gave his opinion about having this trench. So according to that particular book that I read, the way that Salman Al-Farsi gave the answer, meaning that he was a scientist. That's what I read. KPI in full meaning, Key Performance Index. key performance index is the index people are looking at how you develop your countries. First, people looking at how much money you spend, your GNP, how much from GNP you spend for research in science and technology. For instance, in Japan, they spend about 3%. But in Malaysia, we don't even touch 1% from our GNP for research. Number two, how many research scholars atau research students involved, like PhD and master, in doing research. You produce annually. They count that number. And number three is how many industrial sector, corporate sector, who are willing to do research, meaning they have to develop, when they do research, they have to develop knowledge. They must share the knowledge, they must present in seminar, whatever it is. Number four, they look to how many scientific article that your scholars publish. So now they can count. That's why they can rank university and so on. So that is KPI. Some of the consideration they give in order to rank, to know that the country is science, technology, savvy or not. So this is how they rank. Okay.
Okay, I think that's all from the participant.
Okay.
Maybe they don't have any more question. And thank you very much, Prof, for your sharing knowledge today. We
Yes.
hope all the participants can get understand from learning today. May Allah bless you and grant you with the Jannatul Firdaus.
Thank you very much. I'm leaving now.
Yeah, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. Now, Alhamdulillah, Prof. Muhammad, now you are already in the screen, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
You have shared the slide already.
Yes.
Okay, all the participants. Now, I think you have known Dr. Muhammad Rashad Bakasmar already before, because they have become our MC before, but we never introduced him yet about his perfect biodata, mashallah. So today we will learn with him about the leadership and Islamic perspective. Before this, I want to introduce him a bit so that we know him. Dr. Muhammad Rashad Bakasmar from Zanzibar, from Tanzania. He holds a bachelor degree in political science and master degree also in political science, both from the International Islamic University Malaysia, known as IIUM. So Dr. Bakasmar has a PhD in political from Mohd University, Australia, mashallah. Dr. Bakasmar also is currently director at the Research Management Centers at Infrastructure University Kuala Lumpur and a fellow at IIIT East and Southeast Asia. Doctor is a fellow to the he is a fellow at the IRK HS IIUM. Prior to joining IIUM, he taught at the Mohd University in Australia and also at the University of Melbourne. MashaAllah. This is his expert profile. Now we want to listen from him about the lectures today. فليتفضل مأجورة, Doctor.
Thank you, Sister Jaria. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Alhamdulillah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yaumiddin, amma ba'd. Thank you so much, Sister Jaria. my utmost thanks to my dear Dato Jamal Othman, Professor Emeritus Dato Jamal Othman, for giving me this opportunity to share with you a few points on the topic of leadership in Islamic perspective. It was a pleasure to be a student in this class together with the rest of the participants from the beginning. As you can see, my profile, I'm a political science student, and I just learned Islam from the angle of being a Muslim student of knowledge. So unlike my teachers, including Prof. Yusuf Osman, who just completed his portion for today, the lecture for today, I'm not an expert of Islamic theology, but just a student of Islamic knowledge, and a student in this class as well. That's how I see myself, and I hope that perspective probably is reflected in the way I will be sharing the points. So we learn together, and this is the topic for today. My apologies from the beginning. My health is not very excellent for today. A little bit of, I'm under the weather a little bit. So sometimes I will have to maybe stop and drink some water just to clear my throat. But I hope that will not be a big problem, inshallah. My dear brothers and sisters, and my teachers who have been in this class for the last more than almost 3 months plus, this is a topic that I want to share a few points on with everyone. Leadership and Islamic perspective. So the idea here is to study the concept of leadership within the few minutes we have. It's a vast area with a lot of scholarship in Islam, but to study it from the Quranic perspective. So leadership from the Qur'an and Sunnah, mostly, to get some of the guidance we get from the Holy Qur'an and from the Sunnah on how to understand the idea of leadership. So that is how I'm looking at these few minutes that I have today to provide some outline of what we can study on our own later on to understand the idea of leadership from Islamic perspective. In this presentation, I will cover some points. Hopefully, I will cover as much as I can. But I plan to cover some basic principles of leadership in Islam, dimensions of leadership in Islam, the concept of istikhlaf or khilafah, istikhlaf, vicegerency, for a community. At the level of community, there is vicegerency. Quran divides the concept of leadership in terms of istikhlaf in two kinds of dimensions. One is at individual human beings. We are khulafa, we are vicegerents. Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. So as a human being, we have some responsibilities, each one of us, as a vicegerents of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then at the level of community, some communities, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless them from time to time. We learn from the Quran to be the leading community in the world at that time based on certain principles. And then we will look into that, hopefully, if we have the time, in the second portion of this presentation. And then we have points on leadership of an individual leading others in daily life activities, and also the dimension of leadership of individual leading the wider society, like a leader of a country or leader of a big organization, etc. So all those levels of leadership, we find them, they are covered from an Islamic perspective. Now, I thought the first thing we probably need to do is to review some of the important points that our teachers have been teaching us in the last few months on the idea of Qur'an and Sunnah, studies in the Qur'an and Sunnah. Because to say that this is leadership from Islamic perspective, the first question is not what is leadership, but is what is Islamic perspective. And the way I'm presenting it here is, it is a perspective that we derive from the Quranic worldview. And this perspective is derived from the principles that we learn from the Quran. And secondly, the perspective that we learn from the Sharia particularly from objectives of Sharia or maqasid al-Sharia, which will include Sunnah as well. So Quran and Sunnah and the teachings of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and of course the derivation of rules from the principles of usul al-fiqh by our scholars who propound the concept of leadership from Islamic law. So you have the Quran, you have the Sunnah, and you have the analysis of the concept of leadership from these two main sources by our Islamic scholars, which I will touch less on the scholars and more on the Quran and Sunnah because the time limitation that we have. Okay, so the Islamic perspective will have to be derived briefly first, then we use that concept or that perspective of Quranic worldview and maqasid al-Sharia that were also explained very well by our Dr. Shaaya before this when he was discussing about management from Islamic perspective. He touched quite a bit on maqasid al-Sharia. So we'll review a few points on these two, and then we will apply them, the Islamic worldview, on understanding what is leadership from Islamic perspective. Okay, so we will cover the Quranic worldview, the objectives of Sharia, the teachings or sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his lifetime, and from the lessons we learned from the Khulafa al-Rashidun, knowledge and explanation from Muslim scholars, and knowledge from other experts on the topic, including Western experts in some minor points, as mentioned by Prof. Yusuf just now, that we learn from them as well. And Muslims are supposed to learn from all good sources of knowledge that are compatible with our principles in the Quran and Sunnah. We are allowed to explore knowledge from all good sources, whether the source is a confessed Muslim or an expert who comes from another community. That is the teachings of the Sunnah. We shouldn't limit ourselves only to Muslim scholars, but we can learn from others as well if it is useful. So this knowledge of leadership will be based on the naqli sources, which is the texts, the textual Quranic texts and the Sunan of the Prophet, as well as knowledge from reason and from observation or what we call experience of human experience in history that is derived by our scholars. So first we start with the point on what is Quranic worldview to form the context of what is Islamic perspective to study leadership. Before outlining some of the characteristics of the Quranic worldview, we need first to define what is a worldview. There are several definitions of the term worldview for the purposes of this discussion. I have selected the following definition by Prof. Fathi Hasan Malkawi. In his recent book, Epistemological Integration, Essentials of an Islamic Methodology, which is published, I think, 1 or 2 years ago, Prof. Malkawi provides a few definitions of the term worldview. According to Prof. Malkawi, worldview is a modern philosophical term referring to an all-inclusive view of the world that takes all its parts, elements, and components and systems into account. Worldview is a vision of the nature of things that we as human beings form within the broadest possible framework within our minds. Such a vision consists of authoritative rules, frameworks for thought and action, ideas and action, within the society's overall value system. In this case, within the Muslim society's value system derived from the Sharia. The lens through which the human mind, worldview, is also understood as the lens through which the human mind perceives the realities around the person and the universe, life, and human being. So this is basically a worldview is the lens you wear on your mind to see the reality around you. So someone will see a dog and see a pet. Someone will see a dog and see probably something that he has to stay away before he wants to pray, because his perception of that animal because of some value system says there is some limitations or some rules regarding how you interact with this particular animal and in terms of your spiritual activities. And that is a worldview that a Muslim probably will have when he looks at certain objects or animals or anything, because there is a worldview, there is a lens formed by Sharia that is dictating how our mind perceives not just the dog, but everything around us. So that's his leadership also has to be perceived through this Islamic perspective. And we start. So the Islamic worldview then, what it is, it's an expression, Prof. Malkawi says, is an expression of the overall belief-based conceptualization embodied in Islamic doctrine. So our worldview as Muslims to perceive leadership is belief-based, is based on our belief that is shaped by the principles in the Qur'an and Sunnah. This conceptualization offers a comprehensive explanation of existence. It also gives rise to individuals' concrete way of life and the rules that govern their behavior in light of the understanding of their place, position, status in the universe and the purpose of their existence. So the Quran will shape how a leader sees himself and how the follower sees the leader, how the leader sees his responsibilities to himself and to the community and to the universe around him, to the whole, to the world community, to the people in general. And the Quran and Sunnah will shape that perspective of how duties are defined by the Islamic rules and Islamic principles to understand the conception of leadership in Islam. In his book, our dear Al-Marhum Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, The Quranic Worldview, a springboard for cultural reform, Professor Abu Sulaiman defines the Quranic worldview, the worldview that we derive from the Quran, as follows. The Quranic worldview is an ethical, monotheistic means tawhidic, purposeful means the Quran sees the creation has a purpose, and therefore the leader interacts with the things around him as if they are purposeful. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. Nothing has been created purposeless. Everything is purposeful. سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Positive perspective on the world and those in it, which reflects the healthy, well-balanced human nature that God created within us. It follows of necessity, Prof. Abu Sulaiman says, then that this Islamic or Quranic worldview is a scientific, law-governed perspective that supports responsible stewardship of the earth and its riches. Stewardship means leadership of the earth and its wealth within the earth that humans have been given to utilize for their benefit by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is a Quranic worldview. There's an ethical component, there's a spiritual component, tawhidic component, there is a reason and a purposeful component, which is a philosophical component to understand the purpose of our existence, the purpose of the leader, the purpose of our interaction with the leader, and the way we can bring a positive benefit through this understanding as leaders. So that is a Quranic worldview. We have to have all these components of ethics, spiritual or theological, philosophical, as well as the empirical perspective on how we can use the knowledge we have as leaders and as communities to bring positive change in the world. Prof. Abu Sulaiman then highlights the following principles in his book, The Quranic Worldview, as Quranic principles. Principles embodied in the Quranic worldview. Tawheed, istikhlaf, justice, adl, and moderation, freedom, responsibility, purposefulness, morality, mutual consultation, freedom and consultation or cooperation as necessary condition for survival of human civilization, law-governed scientific comprehensiveness, peace as a fundamental principle of coexistence, that the default state for Muslim leadership is to maintain peace, and anything else is a darura. To deviate from this principle has to be emergency, not the default state. and appreciating and contributing to the beauty that Allah has created around us, which I think Prof. Yusuf Othman has spent the last few classes highlighting beautifully about how different communities have contributed in this dimension, and also how this dimension can be seen in different communities with beautiful pictures. I remember watching his lecture and learning from him. So these are the principles that we get from the book that define what is the Islamic or Quranic worldview that we want to use to study leadership today. Now, the second part, I said the context is formed by Sharia or Maqasid al-Sharia. According to our own Professor Muhammad Hashim Kamali, who is an expert in Islamic law and Islamic theology, in his book, Principles of Islamic Jurisprudence, he terms Maqasid al-Sharia as generally translated as objectives of Islamic law. Professor Kamali says, the Sharia is generally predicated on the benefits. The main important concept in the objectives or understanding objective of Sharia is maslaha. Benefit is maslaha, masalih is plural, to the individual and community. So a leader who is guided by Sharia has to focus, according to Maqasid al-Sharia, on how to maximize the benefits in a halal way, of course, based within the limitations of the Qur'an and Sunnah and Sharia, to the individuals and the community in general, and minimizing harm, that is the opposite of maximizing benefit, Islamic benefit, that is, to the individual and community. And its laws are designed to protect these benefits and to facilitate the improvement and perfection of the conditions of human life on earth. And it is at this point that Maqasid becomes a very integral part of our understanding of science and technology. Because the improvement of and perfection of the conditions of human life on earth, as we have heard from Prof. Yusuf, is very much the essence of scientific innovation and discoveries. Professor Kamali also says, the Quran is expressive of this when it singles out the most important purpose of the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the maslaha part. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. O Muhammad, we have not sent you but just to be a mercy, rahmah, to the world. The concept of maslaha and rahmah, they are integrated in Maqasid al-Sharia. This is the anchor point to understand almost every other concept that we are studying from Islamic perspective. The Quran characterizes itself as a healing to the spiritual ailments of the hearts and a guidance and mercy for the believers and mankind. Surah Yunus, verse number 57. Finally, Prof. Kamali continues to highlight some principles that we get from Maqasid, like to eliminate prejudice, alleviate hardship, and establish justice. The laws of the Quran also seek to promote cooperation and support within the family and society at large. What is the point here? The point is that a Muslim leader or a person who leads from an Islamic perspective will be guided by these principles that we find in objectives or Maqasid al-Sharia, that he will work to design a system and conditions to eliminate prejudice, alleviate hardship, and Prof. Kamali also highlights establishing justice. The laws of the Quran guides us to seek and promote cooperation, ukhuwa, and support within the family and society at large. So whatever system of leadership you have in your family or a country has to focus on these principles guided by the idea of maslaha or rahmah, which is an all-pervasive objective of the Sharia. So this is the anchor point to understand most or almost all concepts from Islamic perspective, including, of course, leadership. Other important objectives of Sharia include adl or justice, to place things in their right proper place, that is to be fair, to seek and establish a balance, mizan, between the rights and obligations. So we have rights, and the leaders have to create a system where those rights of the people within his dominion or within his jurisdiction are observed, and everyone as a leader has obligations to those whom he leads. And of course, we will refer to the references from the Quran and Sunnah very soon, to eliminate all excesses, wastefulness, and disparities, meaning gaps which are unfair in all spheres of life. So here we have elimination of wastefulness, and adl refers to being fair and just and honest. So these are the principles that will shape our intellectual prism to study leadership from Islamic perspective. A leader has to have knowledge. Sharia shows us that is very important, and also has to be a spiritually committed Muslim, at least in ritual worship, and also in his moral akhlaq, in his moral behavior, so that he is a man of taqwa. A leader has to strive to observe these, to be a leader from a proper Muslim leader. Okay, so these are principles that we get from both Prof. Kamali's principles of Islamic jurisprudence, of course, making laws or facilitating the process of ijtihad, and of course, the concept of mu'amala, civil transactions. They all derive from Maqasid al-Sharia, which will be part of the responsibilities that we'll see from Quran and Sunnah. So you look at these principles as a summary of the guidance we have from the Quran and Sunnah, Sharia, to study the roles of leadership and the followership in Islam. Maslaha is in the scholarship of Maqasid al-Sharia divided into the most important one, the Daruriyat, which covers the 5 well-known areas: the preservation of deen, preservation of life, preservation of intellect, offspring, and property. Hajiyat, the leader works to create an environment to reduce hardship for his people. That's a lesson from the Quran as well. And tahsiniyat, embellishments, as Prof. Kamali calls them. These are the area of leadership where a leader and his he works to improve the general conditions, to improve beyond just to remove hardship, but to create a civilizational progress and reaching the point of the peak of possibilities in human development. So Quran guides us through Maqasid, Quran and Sunnah, to have this conception of the division of our masalih, our benefits from Quranic perspective. There are the basics, daruriyat. Then there is an area where you reduce hardship, and then there is an area where you develop towards better conditions overall. Some references from the Quran and Sunnah. Look into the ayah, for example, the importance of following Sharia in Islamic leadership. We can see from this ayah, from several ayahs actually. One of them, these are well-known ayat that have been quoted, and I will just review. A person who is a leader has to follow the principles of Quran and Sunnah if he has to lead from an Islamic point of view, to lead properly and to lead justly. And a person who deviates from that is making an error. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Okay, so a person who does not judge by what Allah has revealed and what we are taught by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is a person who is faithless. The leader is faithless. A leader who does not follow the Sharia or the guide by the principles of Allah's revelation, he is a wrongdoer, and also he is a transgressor who deviates from the Surat al-Mustaqim. Okay, so he's a fasiq, he's a zalim, he's a kafir. This is the warning we get from the Quran of the importance of understanding leadership as a religious duty from Islamic perspective, not just as expertise. And therefore, understanding these duties from Islamic perspective requires that the leader and his advisors have some understanding of the principles that guide the way to lead society from the Quran and Sunnah. Hadith, it was narrated that Nafi' ibn Abdul Harith met Omar bin Khattab in Osfan. So this is just to highlight the importance of knowledge and understanding the Quran and Sunnah from our sources. And Sayyidina Omar met this governor of Makkah, and Sayyidina Omar asked, whom have you appointed as your deputy over the people of Makkah, of the valley? He says, I have appointed Ibn Abza over them. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu said, who is Abza? Nafi said, one of our freed slaves. Sayyidina Umar said, have you appointed a freed slave to be their deputy governor? Nafi said, yeah, because he has great knowledge of the book of Allah, meaning Quran. That's the reason why I appointed him to be my deputy governor. Although he was a slave, but he has good knowledge of the Quran. That is his qualification, the CV. And is well versed in the rules of inheritance, which is Sharia. And he's a good qadi. He's a good and fair person, a good judge. Sayyidina Umar then answered, indeed, your Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet Muhammad, taught us that Allah raises some people in their status to make them lead over others by means of this book, Quran, and bring others low by means of it, and bring others low by the means of the same book. Means knowledge of the Quran is essential in qualifying someone to raise your status, and having no knowledge of the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah brings a person down in his status before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, based on the hadith that we have just read from Musnad Ahmad. So now we have that perspective, and we go now to study leadership itself, using that in our background to guide what is the Islamic perspective. That is the Islamic perspective. So now let's go to leadership and apply those principles from Quranic worldview, Islamic worldview, and from Maqasid al-Sharia to understand briefly a few points on leadership. I must admit the time I have for this class is only very limited, so there's a lot in this topic, but I will cover whatever Allah allows us to cover today. And forgive me if there is other points that I would not be able to cover within the limited time I have in this class, but I will do what is possible. To begin with, we have to have this in our mind, that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to the Quran, was the best example of leadership in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. In Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah says, there has certainly been for you in the Messenger of Allah an excellent pattern for anyone whose hope is in Allah and the last day, and who remembers Allah often. Surah Al-Ahzab, Quran, Surah number 33, verse 21. So this is now our yardstick. This is the benchmark of a proper, perfect Muslim leader, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So from an Islamic perspective, if we are to evaluate leadership, then the yardstick, the ultimate yardstick in our prism, in our lens of studying leadership in Islamic perspective, the best leader is, the Quran says, the best example of leadership is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now we have the context, we have the theoretical framework, and we have the measure of studying leadership from Islamic perspective, all of them derived from the Quran and Sunnah itself. So we proceed. From the Islamic perspective, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the best role model for leadership. In his life, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam exemplified the best qualities that a good Muslim leader needs to have. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam behavior was a perfect manifestation of principles like honesty, strong faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is taqwa, iman, obedience to Allah's commandments, gratitude towards Allah, and to show kindness, mercy, and do good. He always exhibited, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam always exhibited great wisdom in his dealings with the people. Hikmah. Hikmah is an important criteria of a good leader. Practice consultation in decision making, and showed great intelligence and creativity in solving problems. So he is the uswatun hasana for any Muslim leader. The Prophet Muhammad is the best example for all Muslim leaders, and these were some of his most cherished characteristics. In one hadith, the Prophet Muhammad taught us, he said, every one of you is a shepherd, and everyone is responsible for what he is a shepherd of. In other words, at our level of individual level, each one of us is a leader. We will expand on this hadith later. It's in Sahih Bukhari. It continues with other details at different levels, the family, the community, etc. Okay, so every one of us as a human being has some responsibility to be a leader, and he's got the responsibility that he has to take care of. So leadership is something that is part and parcel of being a Muslim to begin with. When three people, the Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, when three people set out on a journey, they should appoint one of them as a leader, as their leader. In other words, from the point of being a small group of people, there is Islamic concepts of leadership, and there is a conception of leadership until at the macro level or national level or world level, the ummatic level, the Khalifa, we call the Khalifa or the Imam. Okay? So we have to understand Islamic perspective of leadership at all these levels. Let's define leadership now from Islamic perspective. Dr. Hisham Al-Talib, our own Dr. Hisham Al-Talib, in his book defines leadership, refers to the process of moving people, guiding people, not physically moving them, guiding people towards a planned direction. There is planning there. So a leader has to be a good planner and a good motivator to move people towards the direction by motivating them to action through non-compulsive means. That is an Islamic way of looking at simply at what is leadership. Okay, so a leadership has to have the skills to tap into the knowledge he has and those around him through shura and learning and knowledge, create a knowledge space where that can be done, the planning part, identify the right direction for those whom he is leading, and then have the hikmah of being able to motivate people, to move them, to follow him, to implement the plan without being compelling them, using force to get them to follow. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says there's no compulsion in religion itself. La ikraha fid din. Qad tabayyana ar-rushdu min al-ghayy. There is no compulsion in religion, and therefore there is no compulsion in leadership for a Muslim. A leader, therefore, is one who guides others in this collective process aimed at achieving a specific objective or changing a certain condition or situation using planned actions based on knowledge and wisdom without using force. So dictatorship, brutality, all those kind of unpleasant styles of leading people using methods that are compulsive is not the best or not the chosen path for Muslim leaders. Other definitions we can learn from others outside the fold of Islam also are there. From a management perspective, a management or organizational perspective, leadership is the ability of an individual to influence his subordinates or her subordinates to achieve organizational goals. So you can see here, this is a small organization, there is a leadership, and Prof. Arif mentions that that is how you define leadership generally, not necessarily deriving from the Quran, but that, of course, definition is compatible with our framework of Islamic leadership. Leadership can be defined also as a process of directing and giving influence to the activities of a group of members which are related to their duties, responsibilities. So this is coming from Stoner and Perber. Sorry, it's not in his end. And you can find that even the Western definitions or non-theological definitions which are compatible with our Islamic framework that we have identified, we can also learn from those and integrate them with our own epistemological framework of Islamic understanding of leadership if the principles in those Western or non-Islamic research and scholarship are compatible with Islamic and Quranic and Sharia perspective, such as this one. According to Al-Mawardi. In Islam, leadership became the principle upon which the basis of religious association were established. So it's an important integral part for establishing an Islamic system, leadership. Leadership also became the principle by which the well-being of the people, masalih, was regulated. The planning for how to bring benefit in Islamic history was always guided by good leaders. And also leaders were improving the conditions of the people, especially those who are in trouble in the society, those are weak ones in the society. This is the Quranic and the Sharia teaching of the responsibility of the leader. You look at the weak in society and you design a system to help to improve their well-being. And then the affairs of the common interest for everyone in the society are also responsibility of the leader. He has to create a system which follows the principles of Quranic worldview, of freedom and adala, which is justice and community fairness and peace, to stabilize the relationships for the whole community of all sectors of the community. Okay, so that is, you can see conceptions we get from learning some of the ideas of Imam Al-Mawardi. Now we look at the leadership as a tenet that is concerning the concept of kullukum ra'. Every one of you is a shepherd, as we have mentioned. Leadership is a tenet that is highly emphasized in Islam. So we are developing the idea of amana. Every one of you has a responsibility to lead. Kullukum ra'in. We must mention just now before this. So now we expand on that point. Leadership is a tenet that is highly emphasized in Islam and is embodied within the pillar of accountability or amana. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, I repeat, I have mentioned this, every one of you is a guardian and is responsible for his subjects. The word responsible is a clear reference to amana or trust. The leadership is a trust, is an amana that is a spiritual dimension, that we are responsible ultimately as leaders to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what we do as leaders. This is the main difference between a secular definition of leadership and Islamic definition of leadership. That in the secular definition of leadership, the concept of amana or guardianship is based on the interest defined by the stakeholders of that particular setup, whether it is a company or a country. What those who gave you the power or chose you, or those who have interest in the organization, stake in organization, demand is your accountability. There is no spiritual or theological dimension to the duties of a leader from the secular epistemological framework. But when we come to Islamic perspective, this is a main differential, that amana is defined not just on the basis of general human values, but also as a trust that we are responsible to answer for in akhirah. Okay, so the responsibility is defined from also a spiritual dimension. Now this is a full hadith. Each one of you is a shepherd and is responsible for his flock. Now we look at the dimensions. A leader of a people, of a community, is a guardian and is responsible to Allah and to the people as well for what he does to his subjects. A man is a guardian of his family. A husband is a guardian of his family and is asked to be responsible to Allah and to his family members for their affairs. A wife is a guardian of her husband's home and family and children, and she will be responsible in dunya and akhirah before Allah for how she performs this responsibility. She is a leader at that level, even as a wife, and also a servant. Well, abd is a guardian of his master's property and will be answerable to it before Allah and before his master. So there is this dimension of integrating the spiritual with the temporal, the dunya and the hereafter, within defining the Islamic perspective, responsibility of a leader from Islamic perspective. Okay, so here we have a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ who says, there is no one whom Allah has put in a position of authority, of leadership, and he dies on the day he dies, or she dies on the day she dies. There is no one whom Allah has put in a position of leadership and he dies on the day he dies while cheating those under his authority, but Allah will forbid paradise for him. This is a very important hadith, Sahih from Sahih Bukhari, that emphasizes the point of honesty as from Islamic perspective. A leader has to be honest, he cannot cheat, because a person who gets authority to lead at any of these levels we have identified, and he becomes dishonest to those whom he leads or she leads, when that person dies while cheating those under his authority, Allah will forbid Jannah for him, will make Jannah haram for him. This is such a sensitive point that we have to remember. Islam has got the definition of leadership both as a dunya responsibility and as accountability is there in akhirah as well. And this is the perspective of leadership in Islam. I have a few minutes, Sister Jaria. I think 5 minutes. How many minutes do I have? Sister Jaria, how many minutes do I have?
We have until 10:30.
Until 10:30. So about 6 minutes or 10 minutes, like that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, inshallah. I will try to stop there. We have a break. We can do our question and answer session in the second part, because I'll be doing two episodes. So the second part I will deal with that after we take a short break, and then if there's any questions, we'll deal with them there. Let's continue on this one. That means instead of cheating people in Islam, a leader is supposed to protect the people, to protect, not to cheat. Ra'in, kullukum ra'in. Ra' is a protector, a guardian from abuse. Protect our people from abuse. Those whom we lead, we protect them from our own tyranny, our own dictatorship. We have to be merciful towards those whom we lead. Maslaha, rahma. Protect them also from unnecessary hardships that we can, within our control, help to create a situation where the hardships can be reduced. We should not expose our subjects or those whom we lead to unnecessary hardship. Hajiyat. We provide the hajiyat. And then to promote justice, as we saw in the what we call maqasid al-sharia, and to encourage people to worship and serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hifdhuddin. A servant leadership. A good Muslim leader sees himself as a servant. Khadim. Sayyidul Qawm, Khadimuhum. The leader of a nation in Islam sees himself as their servant. A servant, not a boss. That is the Islamic perception of leadership. Okay, the Muslim leader should bear his or her responsibility guided by knowledge. Okay, I think this has been emphasized a lot by our previous teachers. Aql or reason has been considered the basis of obligation and responsibility, or taklif. Once a person has reached that age of maturity and discernment, bulugh and tamyiz, meaning the leader has to be a person who is an adult. A leader has to be a person who can differentiate, who is matured, means has a bit of wisdom in his decision making, and is not mentally impaired in a way that he cannot perform the duties or responsibilities of leadership. So we have the idea of being an adult, being knowledgeable, and being mentally stable. Islam, a leader needs to be guided by knowledge, by reason, and wisdom, hikmah. This we all get from Maqasid and from the Qur'an and Sunnah. As noted above, leadership in Islam is closely connected to the notion of taklif, which refers to entrusting obligation, seeing it as a duty, and also we have to be able to share the duty with those whom we lead, and also those who are other leaders within our jurisdiction. The concept of taklif is central to our understanding of leadership, to obligation, entrusting obligation in Islam. So we have to understand that a leader is taking a burden, is a burden you're taking to fulfill a religious duty as well as a duty towards fellow human beings. In Islam, we see it as a duty. With taklif, we take a responsibility to our understanding of leadership and duties of a leader in Islam. Taklif is the basis of man's humanity and puts human beings on a higher level than the rest of creation, because the other creation, apart from human beings, cannot do this taklif. You cannot take responsibility for other animals. If the animals do not take responsibilities to take care of the rest of the animal kingdom, humans take care of everyone. Lil alamin. We are supposed to take care of the creation, not just a human being, but whatever that's around us. It's our responsibility. Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. The ard, the whole creation, is a responsibility as under this concept of taklif. Human beings' position as Khalifa entails responsibility and accountability in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fellow humans, and the rest of creation to him or herself. This is now leading us to our next part, where we will be discussing the concept of istikhlaf. What is a Khalifa leader? So that we can connect the responsibilities at different levels, responsibility to Allah, to humans, and to the rest of creation. Let's finish this part maybe with one or two slides with some references from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights the consequences of betraying this amana of leadership. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, وَإِذَا أَرَدْنَا أَن نُهْلِكَ قَرْيَةً أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَ فِيهَا فَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا فَحَقَّ عَلَيْهَا الْقَوْلُ فَدَمَّرْنَاهَا تَدْمِيرًا. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to destroy a population, destruction of a population, I think Prof Yusuf has identified some good examples in his lectures of past societies that were destroyed. When Allah decides to destroy a population, we first send a definite order to those among them who are given the good things in this life. The elite of society are given a warning. Do not do those things that you are doing, they are wrong. Allah will create an agent who will communicate and remind them of not to be destructive. Amarna mutrafiha. The mutrafiha are the elites, the political elites, the business elites, the religious elites of the community. When Allah is about to destroy a population, this first will happen. They will be warned. The affluent elite in the community. But then you will see that these elites will disregard the warning from Allah's message. فَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا فَحَقَّ عَلَيْهَا الْقَوْلُ فَدَمَّرْنَاهَا تَدْمِيرًا. But they will defiantly disobey the Sharia, the Quranic injunctions. When the leaders do that, the word is proved against them. Allah declared punishment against them. وَدَمَّرْنَاهَا تَدْمِيرًا. Allah destroys the whole community utterly. What does this mean is referring back to the previous slide, leadership as a responsibility, not just to us, but to the well-being of the community, because when the leadership is all committing transgressions, Allah will send a warning, and then after the warning is disobeyed, Allah will decree punishment for the leaders, and it is also possible for the whole community utterly, completely will be destroyed. In other words, it is a responsibility of the followers to remind the leaders to keep on track, to based on the principles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to follow. Muslim leaders have to be working together, and the followers have an obligation to be part of this, because if you let the leaders without any reminders to follow the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah decrees his punishment because of the bad deeds of the leadership at all these levels that we have described, family, community, nation, etc., the punishment of Allah will be for those who are committing transgressions, and for those followers who did not do kuntu khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas ta'muruna bil ma'rufi wa tanhauna 'anil munkar. So if you don't do that to a leadership as well, you don't remind them, as followers, you have a responsibility to keep the leadership on track based on the maqasid al-sharia. Otherwise, Allah may choose to send a punishment for the whole community, as we learn from the Quran. So this now will bring us next to our next part later on to discuss istikhlaf and how it works. Let me finish with this in this part. Good leadership moves people in a direction. In Islamic perspective, good leadership moves people in a direction that is truly their long-term best interest. Prof. Hisham al-Talib says, the means and ends should serve the interests of the people. This is the focus of a Muslim leader, serving the interests of the people. An honest leader who doesn't cheat, because he will not go to paradise if he cheats, is one who leads and not one who manipulates. Leadership, he says, Prof. Talib, Hisham al-Talib says, leadership is a responsibility, it is amana, and not prestige from Islamic perspective. It's not for tasrif. A good leader needs to have a clearly defined mission and course. Quoting the late Sheikh Dr. Ismail Farouqi, who once said, the person or a leader with a role that is relevant to us here is a person with a cause, with a mission, with a clearly defined direction. A person with a vision. A Muslim leader has to be a person with a cause, a mission, and a vision. So you know what is your plan, what you want to achieve, what is the vision for your leadership, for your family, for your country, for your company, and you design a plan based on the principles of the Sharia without going against those principles, and fulfill the role of Maqasid Sharia, providing benefits and minimizing harm, and going for first protecting the basics, the 5 basics, daruriyat, then removing hardship, and then maximizing on the potential of the resources that you have to create the best condition for you, for those whom we are leaders, based on a specific vision that is defined from the Quranic worldview. So that is basically what we get from this introductory part of my lecture. I hope, Sister Jaria, we can take a break now, and then we come back at exactly half an hour.
Yes,
and then we can continue for the second part. Shukran. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Doctor. We will meet you in 11, yeah? In 11.
Inshallah. 11 o'clock, inshallah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the participants, now we have a break about half hour. Inshallah, we will come back at 11. The same subject with the Dr. Dr. Rashad, inshallah.
Rashad, yes. Sister Jaria, is my voice clear?
Yes, doctor. It's clear.
Alhamdulillah. Because the next building, they are doing some renovation.
Oh.
I hope they don't disturb so much our class.
I think it's okay, doctor. It doesn't have any sounds.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Because there is a lot of noise near me suddenly. So, Alhamdulillah, if it doesn't, then it's good.
Inshallah.
Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. So just tell me when we are ready to go. Is it time now, or can we continue, or not yet? Another 1 minute, 2 minutes?
Yeah, another 2 minutes, inshallah.
Okay. Okay, can we start now?
Okay, doctor, we can start.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My dear brothers and sisters, professors, colleagues, all those who are with us, we just continue with our brief introductory lecture on leadership from an Islamic perspective. We were here before we went for the break. I will probably spend a few minutes to begin checking some of the questions that are already in the chat for our first part of the lecture. I'll take a few minutes while others are rejoining. We will start addressing those some of the comments and questions, which are very interesting. Is it okay, Sister Jaria, if I do that first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There is a question here from Brother Nuruddin. What is the difference between the worldview concept as conceptualized by Hasan Malkawi and Kuhnian's paradigm concept? I wrote here paradigma, but I think it's paradigm concept. I assume Brother Nuruddin is referring to the concept of paradigm by Thomas Kuhn, who is famously well-known work of Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Although he's not mentioned in the question, but I think that is where the idea comes from. He talks about the concept of paradigm. In fact, many scholars of knowledge, people of knowledge, associate the origin of the term paradigm with Thomas Kuhn. So this is a very good question. There is similarity between the idea of Islamic worldview that we are presenting here, that also we refer to Prof. Malkawi's work, epistemology, and also Thomas Kuhn, but there are also some differences. Okay, so we have to be nuanced. Paradigm, the way it is defined in the work by Thomas Kuhn, if I recall correctly, is basically a theoretical platform through which scholars of a certain period, so it is periodic, look at a certain what you call phenomenon and study it through that prism. So probably the understanding of, for example, astronomy before the scientific revolution was probably done in a different way. And there was a lot of reasoning and philosophy and religion involved in understanding how the planets move, how the sun moves, the shape of the earth. And later on, as science developed and we have all the technologies, our understanding changes because the whole theoretical framework for studying astronomy, and I think Prof. Yusuf is an expert in this much more than me, would be informed by the new findings, and we probably can even replace the previous paradigm or the previous theoretical framework for studying astronomy with the new framework based on the new information and theories that are formed with the discoveries of knowledge. So there is a total replacement in some cases. Thomas Kuhn sees it as possible to replace one paradigm, one theoretical framework, or one epistemological framework for studying a certain phenomenon with another one, if the new community of scholars, as he describes in the Structure of Revolution, can convince the knowledge community that their new approach is the better way to understand that particular phenomenon. And in this example, I'm using astronomy. So what Thomas Kuhn defines paradigm is based on the acceptance of that framework by the intellectual community, and that paradigm becomes the new paradigm for studying that phenomenon. Now, Prof. Malkawi is referring to the Islamic worldview. Now, the Islamic worldview has two parts. One part we can say is related a bit to that Kuhn's paradigm understanding. That is the ijtihad part. But then there is the core part. So there's a core and there's a flexible part. The core is not changeable. No matter what other scholars will say, they cannot change the basic premise set in the Sharia, in the Qur'an and Sunnah. The certain principles are fixed. In Allah is one, Allah is the creator. There is Tawheed Rububiyyah, Tawheed ila Uluhiyyah and Rububiyyah. The relationship of humans and reality is based on their relationship with God. Everything we are answerable to our creator. This is the basic premise. And there's dunya and there's akhirah responsibility and accountability. This is unchangeable. Tawheed is unchangeable as the core of this Islamic worldview or paradigm, if you want to use Thomas Kuhn words. So you cannot have any kind of reasoning that will replace this paradigm, this core of this paradigm, from Islamic perspective with any other new paradigm that Thomas Kuhn would allow in his description of his word paradigm. Okay, then there is the second part. The second part of the Islamic worldview or Islamic Malkawi is what they call Islamic perspective or worldview, is the one that we discover through our ijtihad, our search for knowledge, which is continuous, non-stop throughout human life, through human history. And we discover new facts, new realities, new events, and we integrate this and modify our theories of understanding the reality around us based on the new knowledge, new ijtihad. But this ijtihad does not replace the core fundamentals of Sharia from Tawheedic paradigm. So there is a two-part in the Islamic worldview that Malkawi and other Muslim scholars would present. And then there is that ijtihadi part, which is application or understanding more and more discoveries based on the Qur'an and Sunnah. So to make it simple, while Thomas Kuhn understanding would be, there is a possibility of a total replacement of one paradigm to another, that would not be possible to totally replace Islamic perspective or Islamic worldview with another Islamic worldview that is different from the Qur'an and Sunnah. So I think you can see that the Islamic perspective, Quranic worldview, there is a fundamental principles that are permanent. And then there is a permission for human intellect to discover, to learn, and inform our understanding of Allah's creation and Allah's power through our new knowledge, while changing the understanding of the reality, we do not change the perspective. Let me give you one small example to finish this. Allah will have some description about the purpose of life, the reason of creation, the history of humankind is described in the Quran. We are not today sure whether aliens or there are communities elsewhere who look like us living. Let's say in the future, science discovers a community somewhere in a certain planet that we did not know today. That will be informing our understanding of the meaning of the word ummah. But probably that will be also a new way of defining certain concepts in the Sharia or understanding certain concepts of ummah, maybe. But that will not change the Tawhidic paradigm that Allah created all the ummahs, the ummah in this world and ummahs in other planets if we discover in the future. So there will be a new understanding of the word ummah probably, or communities as defined in the Quran. But there will be no change in that discovery if it happens in the future, that Allah is the creator of the entire universe. And Allah, everything that is created has a responsibility. That everything that is created by Allah in any way it is, has a purpose in it. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. So there are fundamental principles in the Islamic worldview, and there are those which we use our intellect to understand these fundamentals based on our discoveries and our constant striving for learning knowledge, including science. So Kun has a paradigm that can be replaced with another one totally, based on new discoveries. Islamic paradigm has a fixed core, theological, Tawhidic core, and then there is that the ijtihadi part, which can be adjusted as we discover new knowledge and through our research and aqli effort. Naqli is fixed, aqli is used to understand the naqli better as we go beyond. So that is probably a nuanced understanding, probably, if you want, between Islamic perspective or paradigm, if you want to use the word paradigm, and Thomas Kuhn's paradigm in the structure of scientific revolutions. I hope that gives some clue of what Brother Nuruddin is asking. Second question I see here is the concept of stewardship or leadership the same as Khalifa or Khilaf and vicegerency? More or less, yes. If you look at translations or some translations of the Quran, by some scholars, they use the word stewardship instead of vicegerent. If you look at some other translations like Yusuf Ali and others, they will use the word Khalifa will be translated as vicegerent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in the way it is translated, Khalifa or Khilafa, Istikhlaf, both words have been used, stewardship and also vicegerency. So more or less, our scholars have interchangeably used these words. You are right here, Brother Nuruddin. Is the concept of leadership, another question from Nuruddin, is the concept of leadership in this context limited to the dimensions of political leadership, or is it broader than that? I think I've covered this in my lecture. There is from the family level to the community, small group who are traveling, 3 people, to the company level or organization, to the national level, to the ummatic level. Our concept of leadership in Islam covers with enough hadith and ayat from the Quran, all of these levels. We are leading a community, we are leading the ummah, we are leading the family, we are taking care of our those around us traveling with us. So the leadership is not just political leadership. No, it can be business leadership, it can be intellectual leadership, it can be family leadership, it can be political, economic, social, all those. A teacher is a murabbi is a leader. So that is in an educational setting. So no, Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifa has got an individual dimension to it, and not everybody can be the imam of the community. Only the Khalifa will be the leader for community, but everyone else is a leader at his own capacity at all levels, not just political. Permission to ask, Doctor, what is the specific comparison between the term Khalif in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, and the term Imam? Here, if you look at Khalifa, we will see it because this is I wanted to cover this in my second part. Khalifa has got a bit, you can use it interchangeably, by some scholars have Imam and Khalifa, but then when they are focusing on political leadership, they use them interchangeably. But if you look at it generally, Imam is a leader of the community, the leader of the Ummah. He's a leader, he's our Imam. But Khalifa is a leader of the community as well as a caretaker of Allah's creation. He is a Khalifa for responsibility towards Allah, responsibility towards other people, and responsibility towards the rest of the creation, including the environment. So the Khalifa is a bit more broader, in my opinion, a concept than just Imam. But then, of course, as I said, some scholars have used this interchangeably. So we can, of course, appreciate that, but you can have a slight nuance of the broadness of the word Khalifa than just the Imam, which is focused on imamate. as described by our scholars, which is more of a community leader or political leader or the authority that we have to follow. Ulul Amr, Imam. I hope that answers that question. ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. Okay. Anthropocentrism. Does the concept of human leadership, this is a question from Nurdin also, implying Islam affirms the concept of anthropocentrism. The concept of anthropocentrism basically putting a human being as the central leader of everything. Okay, so basically here your question is anthropocentrism and Khalifa same thing? A little bit different, because anthropocentrism, yes, has got the idea that a human being is the most important creation or existing creature that takes care of the rest. But then a Khalifa is a vicegerent. He is a representative. Allah sends here as with a duty to implement Allah's commandments. Allah gave a responsibility, taklif, to this person. Malikul Mulk is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in anthropocentrism, there is no much discussion of istikhlaf. Okay, there is just a centrality of human agency as a concept. But then when you bring istikhlaf to that, then you are expanding the concept or secular concept of anthropocentrism a little bit more to include the idea of taklif to it. And that expands it with a spiritual dimension, a theological dimension, and make it much more meaningful in the Islamic perspective than the simple anthropocentric concept from a secular perspective, and therefore expands the paradigm of secularism to include the responsibility towards Allah, and therefore istikhlaf is a better concept to use than anthropocentrism, in my view. But there is, of course, very, very much similar in certain level, the importance of human being as a vicegerent. But he is not the ultimate. That is the point of istikhlaf. The ultimate is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is the idea of Islamization of knowledge a form of good vision of Islam or Islamic leadership, of leadership? 2 points. One, Islamization of knowledge is Islamization of knowledge, not Islamization of leadership. So it's an epistemological redefinition of how we look at knowledge at all levels: engineering, pharmacy, medicine, politics, economics, business, finance, you name it. We look at the fundamental epistemological foundation, how Tawheed re-informs the way we look at the world and redefine our worldview. Okay, leadership is just a small component to it, a small component to the importance of studying, looking at things from an Islamic perspective. So Islamization of knowledge is studying knowledge in general from Islamic sources and from non-Islamic or secular sources, and then evaluate all the information we have and knowledge on the basis of the Quranic and Maqasid Quranic worldview and Maqasid al-Sharia, distill this information to find what is acceptable within the framework of Islamic perspective, and then integrating what is acceptable from all the sources that is compatible with Islamic principles within one body of knowledge, which we call integration of knowledge. So based on human values, universal values that are shared by all communities, they are all filtered through the Quranic perspective, distilled through it, identify what is compatible with Islam, and then reintegrate it into a combined, more informed premise of understanding different phenomena. That is Islamization of knowledge, and leadership studying is only a small component to it. It is an intellectual endeavor, Islamization of knowledge. Leadership is just one topic in that endeavor. I hope that answers the question. Do you think that Quran or Sunnah or Quran and Sunnah grant a clear framework of leadership? Yes, Quran and Sunnah, not Quran or Sunnah. Okay? Ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ul amri minkum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, obey Allah and obey the Prophet. So if you don't follow the Sunnah, only follow the Quran, then you are going against the Quran itself. So it has to be Quran and Sunnah. From your lecture, it seems Islam through Al-Qur'an outlines excellent principle of leadership. This is from Amina. But I think sadly leaders of today seem to neglect these guiding principles. Are these principles too difficult to be put into practice in the globalized world? No, they are not difficult. Inshallah, there are many leaders who are following this. There are weaknesses in everyone, and our job is to remind through all these kind of platforms and inform and remind each other and ourselves to go back to the principles. This is the effort of da'wah. This is the effort of learning. Perfection is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No leader is totally bad and no leader is totally excellent and perfect, except Allah is perfect. So our job is not to condemn the leaders. Our job is to remind everyone about the principles that we are taught in the Quran and Sunnah, and remind ourselves and everyone the importance of abiding by these principles, so that we can continually do the tajdeed, islah and tajdeed of our communities. And that is the purpose of this. That there is a defect in a human behavior or leadership behavior, that is a given of human nature. We are humans. We are not the creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-kamal lillah. Only Allah is perfect. So we have to have that perspective when we are dealing with human reality. And our job, therefore, is to build a dialectic between the right path and our observation of it, and our reminding of each other of the importance of correcting our course towards coming closer to maqasid al-sharia. So it is not about who is bad and who is good leader. It's a question of what is the right type of leadership defined by our Prophet's yardstick as uswatun hasana, and then try to find ways and means to bring back our practices to come closer and closer to this perfect example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I hope I've covered the questions that you have put so far. If there's any more, inshallah, I will try my best as a fellow student. Remember, I'm also a student in this class, to share with you what I have learned from our teachers, and also what is available in our Islamic books and scholars have taught us. Let's continue where we left on good leadership. The last part was we talk about the advice by our own Sheikh Ismail al-Faruqi about the importance of leader having a vision and having a mission, and then ability with wisdom to take that amana and focus on servant leadership, and not see it as a prestige or to be above others, but to be a khadim. So that was the last part. Now we just go a bit more on the teachings, a bit more detail on what we have discussed in our introductory part. Sister Jaria, is my sound clear?
Yes, Doctor.
Alhamdulillah. So now we go to some opinions, which will probably shed some light on some of the questions that have been raised about religious leadership and political leadership from Islamic perspective. We have here a quotation from our own Abu Hasan Muhammad Habib al-Mawardi, who was living in the 10th and 11th century. He was a prominent lawyer of the Shafi'i school in the time of Abbasid Caliphate. In his work, Al-Mawardi saw the possibility of separating religious leadership with political leadership. So now we're looking at some of the analysis and interpretations of these sources by some of the scholars. Mawardi saw the possibility of separating religious leadership with political leadership, as the two may in some situations need different set of skills. So you can see here Mawardi looking at the reality at the time. There may have been a situation where some of the religious leadership was not skilled in developing, let's say, the scientific arena, the other aspect, economics and others, and they're better experts who can do that, but they are not religious scholars. Then Al-Mawardi did see the possibility of having a different community leaders who are managing religious affairs and those who are political leaders, as long as there is shura between them and they're working together, and the religious injunctions are run supreme in all aspects of the community. So there is an idea here that answers one of the questions: is Islamic perspective only covering political leadership? Of course not. Business leadership, religious leadership, political leadership, intellectual leadership, family leadership, etc., etc. In his Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyah, Al-Mawardi emphasized the authority of the state imamate. See, so here, imama is seen as a community leadership, not Khalifa. Khalifa is beyond imamate if you define it strictly as a synonym. Yeah, Khilafah is a little bit more a richer concept, because it includes the other dimensions of taklif. Al-Mawardi's treatise was intended as the theoretical basis for delimitation of the spheres of authority between the Khalif in charge of religious affairs, and Amir, another word used, Imam, another one is Amir, in effective control of civil administration on the basis of a negotiated agreement. So you can see Rosenthal discusses these in his book, classic book in 1958. So I'm just referring to Al-Mawardi here to, the point is to highlight that for our students, because we are only having a few minutes left for studying such a complex and important topic, I'm highlighting some of these areas so that those who wish to go beyond the class can research more on the learning knowledge we got from other scholars, Muslim scholars, on this topic of leadership from Islamic perspective. Al-Mawardi also highlighted the need for leadership to be assumed by someone who is acceptable to those whom he's leading. So there is a slight connection to the importance of being seen as a person who is qualified morally and spiritually and intellectually. People should not be given a leader who is not acceptable to them based on his qualities, based on his character, etc. It should be acceptable a person. And that refers us back to the situation of Sayyidina Omar asking who is being chosen as deputy in the valley in Makkah, and the answer was the former slave was freed. And then he said, why are you choosing a person like that? Will he be acceptable? That is the reference there, though it's not mentioned in the hadith, in the narration. The reference is, will he be accepted by the community? Is he acceptable? And then the answer was, yes, inshallah, because he is an excellent scholar of the Quran, an excellent judge. He's a very just person and an honest person. Because of this characteristic, inshallah, Sayyidina Umar was informed, radiallahu anhu, that this Abza will be acceptable, inshallah, to the community that he is leading. So acceptability was the implication of that narration that I quoted before. And you can see here that the concern of Sayyidina Umar was not that the person was a former slave. No, there is no that in Islam. All Muslims are loved and respected as our brothers. The issue was acceptability of that person to the community. Will they accept him as a leader? Because of all the kinds of people in society. Some are spiritually motivated. Some are still having the traditional, the Quraishi traditional understanding of leader must be elite. Leader must be coming from a top family, a top tribe in the community. Will he be accepted? Then the answer was from Islamic perspective. This person is qualified character-wise, intellectually is qualified, and of course, he is a good scholar of the Quran. And that is a reference to such kind of requirement to choose the Imam. The word Imam is used by Mawardi because he's talking about the political leader. He has to have a good understanding and observance of justice. He has to have good knowledge, possess knowledge, ability to perform ijtihad, or at least to engage with shura, those who can perform ijtihad. He should be a person of good health, because a leader has to be healthy. He has to be a person with a good courage and bravery, because sometimes situations require that. And also he has to come based on the references we have from a family that is acceptable, in that case a family of Quraysh, because within the context of the time, the Quraysh was a leading family of the Meccan community, and therefore coming from that family give you more acceptability. It is not haram to have a leader from another community. It is recommended. If you come from a background that people improve your acceptability as a leader if you have the other more important characteristics. Quraysh is probably the smallest characteristic here. The others, the iman, the taqwa, the knowledge, the ability to have hikmah and justice are more important characteristics. That is Al-Mawardi. Okay. Imam, according to him, is one who best fulfills the condition from amongst the persons, and one who the people would most readily accept and obey, and to whom they would not hesitate in making an oath or allegiance. So this is acceptability. Choose a leader who is acceptable by those whom is going to lead. Okay. If two people fulfill equally the condition of imamate, then look at seniority. This is Al-Mawardi's extrapolation. If one who is more knowledgeable and another one is more courageous, look at the conditions that you're facing. Are you in a condition where you need a courageous leader or knowledgeable leader? Based on the needs of the community, and choice should be depending on the need of that particular time, space factors. Al-Mawardi argued that people should make oath of allegiance to Imam and obey him. That is what we call the constitution today in our countries, the law. There is an oath of allegiance to the law, and therefore the authority that is established by Ulul Amr. Okay, so there are many other qualities of leaders that Al-Mawardi highlights. Must guard the deen, he must execute the legal punishments, the Sharia, protect the territory of the Muslims, establish the had punishment, He must fortify. This is what he has to strive to achieve, is apply the Islamic, the Quranic injunctions as part of his responsibilities. And of course, there is a temporal ijtihadi point there: fortify the border posts against attack, defend them. So you can see that Al-Mawardi was basically referring to the needs of the time, where there was a constant skirmishes between the Muslim community and others, and we have a leader who has to pay attention to this border, in other words, to protect the Muslim Darul Islam from attacks. Okay, so jihad, control the Baitul Mal, so the economic management, he has to have ensure the employment. So these are the duties of the Muslim leader. By Al-Mawardi, he extrapolates them. He must personally take over the surveillance of affairs and scrutiny of circumstances, etc. In other words, the Islamic scholarship of leadership has evolved from those conceptions we have of Quranic principles and Sharia, and our scholars have extrapolated a lot of details. And of course, these details are not Sunnah. They are understandings from different scholars, which can be, of course, with ijtihad, be made more relevant according to the needs of our time, that they should define the conditions that we live today to understand the Islamic perspective of leadership with proper ijtihad to suit our own circumstances. Let's look at Al-Farabi. Al-Farabi, Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Tarkhan ibn Awzala Al-Farabi. In Latin, we call him, these are Muslim scholars I'm referring to, concept of leadership. Latin Al-Farabius, 878-950, so he was in the 9th and 10th century, just before Al-Mawardi. He was a Muslim philosopher and thinker. He was noted Muslim thinker of the medieval times, spent an important part of his lifetime in Baghdad. Among other things, his works engaged with at times were influenced by Greek philosophy. So he was a scholar of what Prof. Yusuf was referring to, Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato. These are Greek philosophers. Socrates is known for his question and answer style of teaching. And one of those who, according to just now we learned from Prof. Yusuf, he didn't write much, but he was a great teacher. So these engagement between the Muslim scholars and concepts of philosophical concepts from the Greek philosophy, one of those who were engaging with this was Al-Farabi. Al-Farabi identified some 12 important habits and attitudes of the ruler of a perfect city. However, he himself found difficulties to get all these qualities in one man, meaning after identifying all the qualities we need in a leader, he realized very difficult to find a person who has all these qualities. These include to be a person of knowledge. A philosopher means knowledgeable person, especially that time. Reason and reasoning and logic was very important. Understanding philosophy was very important. Basically, knowledge. We are living at a time when empirical research was not developed as much as it is today. There was no laboratories. There was philosophy, reasoning as the basic way to interpret and understanding reality. So he has to be a knowledgeable person. He has to be a person who abides by the laws and customs, urf. He will excel in deducting new laws, ijtihad. He has to be able to do ijtihad. This is Al-Farabi also goes and say, good at deliberating, be powerful in his deduction. This is the deduction is the ijtihadi process. He will be good at guiding the people by his speech to fulfill the laws. Okay, so guiding people, again, just like we got the definition from Prof. Hisham al-Talib, that moving people from one point to another based on a certain vision, guiding people, tarbiyah, by his eloquence. He has to be able to have eloquence to convince people what of the vision he has to fulfill the commandments of Allah. Should be tough physique. Of course, this is now time-space definition of leadership. You can see Al-Farabi live in a specific time-space situation where having a tough physical physique was important, because the war there was a physical interaction, not like today we use drones. So of course ijtihad will go through these kind of paradigms and update them. Today's requirement may be slightly different from Al-Farabi was defining, even from Islamic perspective. Okay, so this is interpretation of how we can achieve those the duties of a leader in Islam, what qualities we need according to Al-Farabi. Okay, so in Islam, therefore, leadership is a duty and a spiritual endeavor. This is a simple summary. When a Muslim takes the responsibility to be a leader, he should do so only with the intention to fulfill his duties to his creator. So the leadership is not anthropocentric, it is caliphate. في استخلاف. A good Muslim leader sees leadership as an act of ibadah and not motivated by desire to gain praise or to self-enrich or corruption or seek fame and prestige. Because we are leaders of Islamic leaders. So we have to be khadim of the ummah, the servant of the ummah. And we have to conduct all leadership affairs according to Sharia. Let's look at another scholar, Abu Ali Hasan ibn Ali Tusi, Nizamul Mulk Tusi. He also has worked on this, so if those who are interested to go beyond this lecture, look at Nizamul Mulk Tusi, and he has got some work on Islamic conception of leadership. He describes sultanate as the matter of both deen, religious, and dunya, personal and social. So you can connect this with Al-Mawardi, who said you may need a different kind of qualification sometimes for being as a religious leader, and slightly different from being a leader of a social affairs. And if you don't have a person who has both, you may choose different people to perform different roles in society. And Nizam al-Mulk understanding fits in some way with that description by Al-Mawardi. If God selects a king who has eminent qualities for dealing with his work in the world, in other words, he sees this as istikhlaf, where you're selected by people within the system, but it is a gift from God subhanahu wa ta'ala that the person is given a position to be leading others. So when Allah says he has chosen you as a leader, it doesn't mean he elects you, then he makes a situation in such a way that you are getting that responsibility to lead. He should have the right qualities for ensuring peace in the world. You see, the concept of peace coming from the Quranic worldview is reflected in Nizam al-Mulk explanation on Islamic leadership. To ensure that people live with honor and dignity under his role, which is Maqasid al-Sharia. So you can see all the scholars, when they are trying, Islamic scholars, when they are trying to understand Islam leadership from Islamic perspective, they will draw upon the principles of the Quran, the naqli, and they will apply the understanding, the aqli, plus the experience of the time-space limitations are there, to define how that can be understood, leadership can be understood within their current, at that time, context. Okay, so you can see the core and the ijtihadi part, the core tawhidic principles and the ijtihadi principles applying for all these scholars who are defining the role of leadership in Islam. According to Nizam al-Mulk, when the wazir is of good character and sound judgment, the kingdom or the country or the community becomes prosperous. Okay, so there is the issue of good character and judgment. But when the wazir, the leader, is bad, then irreparable harm is done to the kingdom, which refers to وَإِذَا أَرَدْنَا أَن نُهْلِكَ قَرْيَةً أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَ فِيهَا فَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا فَحَقَّ عَلَيْهَا الْقَوْلُ فَدَمَّرْنَاهَا تَدْمِيرًا. The ayah that we quoted just now is reflected in his understanding and explanation of what is the implication of having a bad leader from a theological and spiritual perspective, and also from experience, that when the leaders are corrupt, the society becomes damage or harm is caused to society. Is connecting to the ayah itself, which is وَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا. I think this ayah was well explained by Prof. Omar Kasule when he started his lectures, that you have to understand the principles of Allah, and you have to know the constants of Allah's principles and commandments, because وَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا. Allah doesn't change his fundamental principles on how he deals with us. Okay, so understanding that informs Nizam al-Mulk Tusi to define the impact of bad leadership in his work. Of course, the importance of good leadership. Indeed, Allah does not change a people's lot. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. So Allah will not change our situation unless we ourselves change what is within our own souls. Allah does not change a people's lot unless they change what is in their hearts, what is in their souls. In other words, to reform or renew a society, islah and tajdeed, to lead a society, to be a good leader, to change positively the condition of society, we have to start by changing our hearts, our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spiritually, and our value system. Because if we are rotten there, then we cannot lead people in a way that is positive. And that will mean وَإِن تَتَوَلَّوْا يَسْتَبْدِلْ قَوْمًا غَيْرَكُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَكُونُوا أَمْثَالَكُمْ. And if you don't come back to the right path, Allah will replace you with other people and they will not be like you. This will come in my next slide when I discuss Ibn Khaldun, inshallah, if I have that time to do so. Good leader has to be transformational, meaning Islam asks a leader to be able to focus on transforming society and those whom he is leading from a condition that is there to improve their condition. And that is moving us from daruriyat to hajiyat to tahsiniyat. So constantly we are transforming Islah in Tajdeed to apply the maqasid principles to embellishment, tahsiniyat. Transform from less good to better. That is the fundamental principle of a good leader in Islamic perspective. Okay, this is from Western understanding of transformational leadership. So we see here we have to be transformational, and this is the definition of what is required to be a transformational leader from the scholarship of leadership that we have. Okay, individual, we have to be able to focus on people, individuals, and how to improve them as a leader. You have to focus on that. You have to be able to stimulate the intellectual culture in the society, so that the intellectual and research activities, just now Prof. Yusuf mentioned about the percentages of research budgets in Japan compared to our own in Malaysia and other countries in the Muslim world. And that is an example of good transformational leadership that is focused on intellectual stimulation and research, and less focus on transforming the knowledge and research, paying less attention to it. So transformational leadership is encouraged in Islam through intellectual stimulation and creating an environment for that. Inspirational motivation means we have to focus on improving people's emotional and the emotive aspect, motivating people so that they are more inclined towards changing themselves and their condition. If I refer you to another work by Prof. Abu Sulaiman, Crisis in the Muslim Mind, the Crisis book, he refers this part of inspirational motivation as one of the reasons why the intellectual transformation is lagging in Muslim communities, because people may have knowledge of what is required to be done in terms of transforming our knowledge, our culture to become more productive, etc. But when we don't have that motivation to Islamically redefine our perspective of life and our motivating ourselves towards achieving that as Khalifa, then lacking the inspirational motivation, it becomes the cause of the failure of the process of Islah and Tajdeed. You can study the Crisis in the Muslim Mind by Prof. Abu Hamid Abu Sulaiman, rahimahullah, and you can find this aspect being highlighted in the first chapter of that book, an idealized influence. Of course, many scholars have talked about this. I'm just giving an example. A transformational leader needs to be able to provide an articulate, clear vision, as we mentioned before through Hisham al-Talib's definition, practice and be open to consultation, shura, wa amru bainahum shura, and manifest supporting, motivating, and exemplary behavior. We have to be exemplary. We have to be uswatun hasana in our own capacity to those whom we are leading. Because the ultimate example of good leader is the Prophet Muhammad SAW, and every leader has to emulate his character to be example for those whom we are leading. Exemplary behavior is something that Muslim leader or Islamic leadership encourages. So we have ihsan, shura, and exemplary behavior. We have to be kind, we have to be approachable, friendly. A leader has to be accessible to those whom he is leading. The Prophet ﷺ was always available to those Sahaba whom he was leading to approach to him and ask him questions and learn from him. And approachability is very important. Putting barriers between the leader and whom he is leading is not an Islamic approach towards leadership. To be accessible to the community, to get to the ground, as they say. Turun Padang in Malaysia, there's a word called Turun Padang. Leader has to go and interact with the people. That is an Islamic leader. Islamic leader is not hiding from the people, but he is kind, amiable, friendly, and accessible. And never the first to withdraw his hand when he greeted anyone. So you can see this explanation by our Muslim scholars about definition of a characteristic of Muslim leader or leadership derived from our knowledge of the Prophet's character. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
Doctor,
Yes.
you have 4 minutes, about 4 minutes
Okay.
to.
Inshallah.
I think it should be the Q&A. Maybe one or two questions. I think in the chat box we have also the question.
Okay, I will stop in about 2-3 minutes and then we will go to that one. Is it okay? Or you want me to go straight to the questions?
I think go straight to the question because we have only 4 minutes.
Okay.
Then will be the session of Prof. Omar.
Okay, inshallah. Thank you for your answer. The scholars you mentioned are good examples of intellectual leadership and contemporary era. I would say the question says, can it be said that figures like Prof. Malkawi, Abu Sulaiman, Hisham al-Talib, Ismail Faruqi, example of intellectual leadership in the contemporary era? From my personal opinion, yes. A big yes. And they are not the only ones. There are many more. Okay, there are many more, but these are definitely among them. We learn a lot from our Muslim scholars who are doing ijtihad around the world. Some of them are our teachers in this online course we are doing. Several of our teachers are great examples of Muslim leaders, intellectual leaders in our world today. And there are many more around the world that you can find. The most important for us is to assess everyone based on their ideas and how they conform to the Quranic and Sharia teachings, and that is how you distill the knowledge and not the personality. So it is not about the personality, it is about the teachings of that person and how we understand them in light of the Quran and Sunnah. And then we decide which part of his teaching we agree with, and maybe which part of his teaching we want to have some discussion more because we feel maybe it is not compatible with certain Quranic or Sharia perspective. So you may agree with some things that a person says, and certain things you have reservation, but we do not condemn someone as he is bad or he is totally perfect, because in intellectual culture, we share and we discuss, and we have yardsticks in Islamic perspective to evaluate what we can include in our epistemological paradigm and what we can take out. And there's a basis of naqli. It becomes the foundation to assess the aqli part of knowledge. Naqli is the textual scriptures form the foundation, the Quran and Sunnah, and the maqasid, and the usulul fiqh. They form the paradigm with which we distill the aqli knowledge that we get from all sources, including Muslim scholars, and see what is acceptable as Islamic perspective, acceptable within the Islamic perspective of any concept, and what needs to be discussed or re-evaluated or redefined. And that is how intellectual culture grows, and inshallah will grow within the ummah. And our scholars today, many more than that you mentioned here in the list, inshallah are there and will be born in the future to take the flag of ijtihad in all fields of knowledge forward, inshallah, for the benefit of the ummah and for the benefit of mankind. Wabillahi tawfiq wal hidayah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I think the student want to have a question, but we have no time now.
Yes.
Because Prof. Omar already waiting us. He already in the room.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you, Jaria. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry for the to the participant who want to have a question. You may give the email to him. Inshallah, he will answer the question. Inshallah, I will give his email.
Inshallah, yes, no problem.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Okay, now let's. I'm calling Prof. Omar. Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
كيف الحال, Prof?
Alhamdulillah, kullu khair, nad'u lakum wa likulli al-ummah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Now we are session with Prof. Omar, and we are so sorry also because Prof. Omar should be in the beginning, but because he have traveled, so inshallah he will participate in this session until the end. Without further ado, فليتفضل معجورة, Prof. Prof, you have slides?
I have slides, and I'm going to try to share them. I hope, inshallah, I will manage. Just we hold on a little bit. Okay. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We'll be talking about biological sciences and the Quran. Yes?
The slide is not appear here.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to share.
Yeah.
Okay, now let me think. Now, does it share now?
Not yet, Prof. Not yet.
Yeah. Share.
Prof?
Yes.
You can send it to me. I will have to share it.
I think so. Now
It's up to now. It's up to now.
Yeah. I hope I will find it. I am on an iPad and not on my computer, which I'm used to. Okay. Let me send you the slides. Then we will work that way. Okay. Okay, I send it to what? Share with your WhatsApp or email?
Can be WhatsApp also, can, Prof.
Okay, WhatsApp. Do I have you in my contacts? What's your number?
I just WhatsApp you just now, Prof. You can see my number 011.
Hello?
Yes, Prof. You can see. I just WhatsApp you just now. You can see my number 011. The first 011.
Okay.
28.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We'll get that going. Okay, now I have sent it.
Yeah. Let me try to share first, Prof.
Okay.
دقيقة. Can you see, Prof?
Yeah, I can see.
But then this in PDF, so sorry. I've tried to convert to convert.
I had also I also had the PowerPoint one. I sent you the PDF.
Yeah, you send me the PDF one.
So what do you do? Will you convert or I send you the PowerPoint one?
Yeah, you send me the PowerPoint. It should be better.
Oh no, but I think I sent you the PowerPoint one. Share. Let me do this again. This is the PowerPoint one. Okay, I sent again the PowerPoint one. For the audience, inshallah, as soon as the screen is done, we'll be starting, but I can start talking. Last time
sure.
I covered several paradigms of the Quran as they relate to biological sciences. Today, I'm going to continue with more paradigms. And in the next session, maybe next week, I will talk about the subject of anatomy, the discipline of anatomy, and its content, again from the Quranic perspective. And in the last session, I will talk about the discipline of physiology and pharmacology and try to apply Quranic paradigms to it. So inshallah, that way we'll have a complete coverage of this subject, inshallah. Now, the issue of reproduction, as you know, is when we produce young, new ones, and it occurs at various levels. At the level of the cell, there is reproduction. There is level of the organ, level of the system, and then level of the whole organism. Now,
please help. Can you help?
Yes. Yes. Hello.
Sorry, Prof. Just now disturbed it. Sorry. I'm trying to share the screen.
Okay.
Just continue, Prof. Sorry.
Okay. So, reproduction in humans is sexual, but there is reproduction that is asexual. Most human reproduction is sexual, but in two instances, we have got reproduction that is asexual, not sexual. That is the birth of Sayyidina Adam. Adam had no mother or father, and Sayyidina Isa had only a mother, as we know in Surah Al-Imran. Now, إن مثل عيسى عند الله كمثل آدم خلقه من تراب ثم قال له كن فيكون. So those are asexual reproduction in humans. In many animals and lower organisms, reproduction is asexual. Only one parent is involved. Now, I want to talk about the issue of change and constancy in biology. The human organism undergoes many changes all the time. Very few things are constant. And the things that are constant in the human being are very few things that do not change. And one of them is that of the ajal, the lifespan. Our ajal is fixed, it cannot change. There is always a balance between change and constancy, because some things change, some things are constant, but there is a balance between the two. And the Quran tells us in Surah Nuh, the 4th verse, إِلَى أَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى إِنَّ أَجَلَ اللَّهِ إِذَا جَاءَ لَا يُؤَخَّرُ لَوْ كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. The ajal cannot be changed, but apart from the ajal, the lifespan, very few things remain constant in the human organism. We change all the time. What cannot happen is a change from one species to another. See, a rabbit cannot become a dog. A monkey cannot become a human. But within the same species, there is always constant changes. Now, these changes, some have been noted. For example, in the books of Hadith, we know that Sayyidina Adam was 70 feet tall. روى الإمام أحمد في مسنده عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال كان طول آدم 60 ذراعا في 7 أذرع عرضا. That Sayyidina Adam was 70 feet tall according to this hadith. I don't know the authenticity of the hadith, but it's in Musnad Ahmad. But we know that Europeans, for example, because they have got records, the height of Europeans in the last 5 centuries has been increasing. People in the 16th century, 14th century were much shorter than the people we have today. Nearer home in Asia, you know that the Japanese in general, in the Second World War, were much shorter than they are today. So change is very common in biology, and it occurs all the time. Another paradigm that we can see, Quranic paradigm that we can look at in biology, is that the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be compared with any other creation. Some people have pretended that they can create the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and many humans have worshipped gods, think that those gods can create. But it's impossible for humans to create something that is like Allah's creation. As the Quran tells us, يا أيها الناس ضرب مثل فاستمعوا له إن الذين يدعون من دون الله لن يخلقوا ذبابا ولو اجتمعوا. Those who do not believe in Allah cannot create a fly. You know, a fly is a very small organism. Even if all of them get together, they cannot create one fly. And the Quran goes on to make this even more explicit about the failure of humans to do what Allah can do, that even if this fly steals something from them, the like fly can fall on your food and take away the food and eat it. You cannot take it from it. When يسلبهم الذباب شيئا لا يستنقذوه, you cannot take away whatever the fly has taken from you. So it shows that Allah's creation is very powerful, and we cannot do something that compares to him. Now, there are some things that we do in biology, like cloning, genetic engineering, selective breeding. Yes, these things we can do, but these are not the novel creation of an organism. The creation of an organism from the beginning, de novo, is only in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran says that we cannot create. قل هل من شرائكم من يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيد قل الله يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيد. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can start life and bring it back. So what we know is that human actions are imperfect. So comparing the human body and the human-made machines shows this very clearly. I'm on now slide 4. Now, the humans have not been able to produce an independent biological system to compare to Allah's creation. The only comparison is that between Allah's creations and machines that humans assemble, because humans have not been able to produce a biological system. But let us compare Allah's creation to the machines that humans have created. You will see that human-made machines, physical machines, do not come anywhere near the perfection of Allah's creation. For example, the human ear is far superior to the recording microphone. The human nostrils and lungs are far superior to air conditioning systems. The human eye is superior to the camera, to the video camera. The liver, which is the factor of the body, is far superior to any chemical reactions in the laboratory. In fact, the liver has got higher efficiency in energy conversion than any machine that humans have created. So, therefore, comparison between Allah's creation and human creation really does not exist. As I said, biologically, there is no human system, biological system created by humans to compare. But when we compare Allah's creation with the machines, the difference is very clear. Now, DNA, which in one cell, the DNA of one cell, if stretched out to stretched about 1 meter, it's very long. And the DNA controls the many metabolic processes that go on in the body, reproductive processes. Everything that goes on in the body is controlled by DNA. There is no human machine that can exercise a similar control to what Allah has done. The human musculoskeletal system is far superior to the machines when you think in terms of mechanical efficiency. Mechanical efficiency means work done compared to the energy expended. The mechanical efficiency of human muscles is 50%. Human machines don't come anywhere near this efficiency. The human heart is a very efficient mechanical pump that operates for decades without stopping, without getting tired. So we can now reach the conclusion that, as the Quran told us, nobody can compare to Allah's creation. And this is borne out by the facts of biology and the facts of physical sciences, inshallah. We'll stop here because the system is not working very well. Inshallah, next time we shall continue with discussing details of the disciplines of anatomy and how they relate to the Quranic paradigms. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm really sorry, Prof, for technical problem. Inshallah, next time we will continue and we will early prepared, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah.
So inshallah today we will end early time. We will end our class in the early time. Inshallah, next time we will continue the same subject with Prof. Omar, Hasan, Kasule, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah.
And we end our class today by Tasbih Kafarah and Surah Al-Asr. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal-asr innal insana lafi khusr. Thank you very much, Prof.
Okay, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.